altogether. All right, next question comes from Angel Calderon. It says, is there potentially something to temporarily benching young, struggling QBs? Bryce Young, AR, and Will Levis are playing their best ball of their careers after spending time on the bench. I know Will Levis was an injury, but the Titans clearly had lost faith in him and had a fire sale. We've talked about this a few times, and it's like, yes, I think benching at every other position in football is treated as something you do to a player who's not playing well.
Yeah.
As for some reason, quarterback, we say we can't bench these guys. It's going to hurt their psyche. We're too
far in.
Another quarterback on the roster who's good. It's going to hurt their
the right
psyche.
guy anyway.
Exactly. It's like that might be the position where you want to bench guys the most. Have the quickest trigger on it to really give them the wake-up call and see what they're made of. Because that does. Like when you are a guy who's played and been a starter their entire life, especially when you're Bryce Young, who's been 5-star recruit, goes to Alabama, immediate success, Heisman, and then to have as little success as he had as a rookie, and in year 2, it's like going out there and beating his head against the wall the way he was not the answer. It just quite obviously wasn't. And so a wake-up call, a break, a pause, whatever, to get him mentally correct. And he's mentally correct. Like you see him, it's a different guy out there, the way he's just
with so much more
reacting to even bad plays that he makes. It's like, wow, where was this guy? He looks like the Alabama guy, just from the way he's smiling, the way he's carrying himself, the body language, all that stuff. Completely different. So, yeah, I think not only should we be benching him, like we should honestly treat it as a position that we're quicker to bench and quicker to bring to the sidelines than maybe others, because it is so mentally taxing of a position that sometimes guys need the break.
I go back and forth on this, right? Because we had this conversation before, me, you, and Kyle and Mike, in regards to we're big proponents of having had to see it before. And I went back and forth, and I'm trying to look and remember in the history, when was the last time a rookie quarterback got benched, came back and had success? And one doesn't come to mind. Now, again, because this has happened, will teams from going forward be like, well, is this the exception or is this the rule?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've seen in history where guys have gotten benched, they came back and started and they still didn't look good. Like we haven't really seen a guy get benched and then come back. Teams allow Peyton to play through the ugliness, right? They allowed Eli Manning to play through the ugliness, right? Even Aaron Rodgers, even though he wasn't a rookie starter when he started in his 4th year, he had some ups and downs, but the Packers let him play through it.
Yep.
And it boded well for them in the future. And in my head, I was like, man, AR and Bryce might be done. Because, again, we're creatures of habits. We want to have seen it before.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it. Exactly. So is this the exception or is this the rule? And I get what you're saying, Mike. Usually, why don't we treat the quarterback position the same? I think it's because when you look at history, teams have allowed guys to play through. Josh Allen's another one. Have allowed guys to play through the nastiness, because at the quarterback position, the only way to get better is to actually have reps.
Yeah.
So it's a little different than every other position. So, I'm glad it's worked out for Bryce. Again, he looks like the guy that we saw at Alabama, right? Throwing with anticipation, staying in that pocket, staring down the barrel with pressure, throwing absolute laser beams. And even his mobility has been a lot better since, coming back from being benched. Same thing with Anthony Richardson. He's been a lot more efficient with the football, not putting it in harm's way. I love that they're getting him really involved in the run game, which, again, you always worry about him because he's been dinged up, in the past. But I just have never seen guys that have been benched before come back and actually have really good careers.
I think that the quarterback position is extremely unique because you are the spark plug of the offense. The car does not operate without a quarterback. And for a guy like Bryce Young to be removed from the situation, watch a guy like Andy Dalton step in and that offense immediately have success.
Yeah.
I feel like Bryce needed to see that it was him and not the unit. And for that experience, I think it was really good. And it allowed him, it opened up his mind to be able to go back into the game when he was the starting quarterback again and have success. He said, well, he can do it. I should be able to do this because I've done it my entire career. Now, an offensive guard, an offensive tackle, if you're not doing well, it's usually just because you're not doing well.
Yeah.
As a rookie quarterback in that situation, you could say, now I'm not saying Bryce Young did this. I've never heard him do this. You could point fingers, well, our protection's terrible, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
He never did that. And we crushed Bryce Young, Me and Prisco were like, this guy's little, he's too little, he can't do this, he can't do that.
How come that man like that?
Well, Pete said he was little, and I was like, you're one to talk. But
Exactly. He's like, that's why I know.
But the quarterback position is as mental as it is physical, and for him to be able to see somebody else have success with that group, I think it made the job of coming back in and having success easier for him. And I do agree with you. We have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
But we've seen it a few times this year, and it's been.
That's what I'm saying. So is that going to be the rule now instead of the exception?
I don't know. There's 2 exceptions now.
Yeah, I know.
I do just think it's a 17-game season now. Yeah. You missed 3 games. That's long. It's still longer than any other season. Yeah. It's like
still 14 games.
You're still getting a ton of reps.
Yeah.
So I think that perspective, benching for like the entire season, I think idiotic. That's not going to fix the issues. But like a mid-season break, if it's really not going well,
timeout.
Yes.
Timeout reset.
Team should be more open to him.
Yeah.
All right.
Timeout full.
Next question here comes from Mason Gardner. He says, what do you look for when a team is struggling to run the ball? The Raiders have been historically bad this year, but the O-line seems pretty talented on paper. They've seen 2 upticks in production, firing Getsy and giving carries to UDFA Sincere McCormick. Kyle, you want to take this one?
First thing I like to do when I'm watching the run game to see if there's success is, are you armless from the back? And I feel like when I say armless from the back, I don't want to see a guy like this. I want to see 5 guys whose elbows are missing. Yep. I want to see butt cheeks, and I want to see leg drive. The other thing I'm going to look at is consistency in double teams. Yeah. If you can't man block and if you can't double team with consistency, you're going to have struggles in the run game. And I know Luke Getsy's groups have more often than not been in tops of the league in the running game. I think a lot of it football comes down to technique, what you do with your hands, what you do with your feet, what your landmarks are. And if you're not having success running the football in the National Football League, I more often than not don't think it's a personnel issue. I think it's a technique issue. And we've talked about it with the Bears before, how you see mismatched techniques across the board. If you get 5 guys doing the same thing, you more often than not will have success. This sweatshirt right here, Notre Dame, let them see synonymous with offensive line dominance, putting a priority on technique, putting a premium on the unit and fundamentals. I was a guy that relied on just ability, and it wasn't until my 6th year in the National Football League that I inherited a coach that really put a premium on technique. And I watched an uptick in my game, and I watched an uptick in the game of all those around me. I feel like if there's struggles in the run game, you have to first look in the mirror with your offensive line coach and the way that you're getting things done from a technique standpoint.
Yeah, I'm one. Again, going back to the Jimmies and the Joes, like a big issue is they don't have Josh Jacobs anymore. I mean, like when you don't have a guy like that,
he makes you look good.
He looks makes you look a lot better, right? When you miss a couple blocks, you can make guys miss and still, run for 4 or 5 yards. I have loved what I've seen from this McCormick kid. He's run with purpose. He's run with some physicality as well, and I think that'll go a long way for him. But the offensive line is actually decent with the Las Vegas Raiders, right? They've actually played pretty well this year. I think this is a personnel issue when it comes to them. And then also, you got to look at the quarterback position. If a defense doesn't fear the quarterback,
they don't respect it. We're going to load the box.
The run game. We're loading up the box.
I will say, I think to hammer home Kyle's point, when I see an offensive line's technique in unison, that's like when I see mismatched technique, when I see not on the same pages up front, that's when I'm like, okay, that's a problem. Like you're not going to have a successful run game. I remember watching the Saints week 1, and I'm like, this isn't a good offensive line, right? It's not the most talented offensive line. But I watched their technique. I'm like, they're going to run the ball.
Point.
They're going to run the ball this year because they are all one step in and the exact same. Like the paths they're taking, like you see how well they've been coached.
Correct.
To drill in that technique. So I think that's one. Obviously, talent helps up front too. But then I do think creativity in run scheme is number 2.
Leverage.
Running back can be an issue if you have guys who really have bad vision, and you've seen that at times with certain running games over the years. But it's rarely there's rarely. I think that's rarely the case. It's usually a combination of your offensive line, how well coached they are, how much talent you have up front, and then just how creative are you in the running game.
And how foolishly confident your OC is sometimes. Like this guy will get this guy blocked. This is going to be a touchdown, guys. And then you go out there and your slot receiver who you just reduced down to tight end gets blown up on the crack block. And during the install all week, I remember sitting there with Josh Sitton from the Green Bay Packers who came to the Bears at the end, and we'd be doing installs. And there'd be some plays where he would stand up and be like, this shit ain't going to work. Now, I wasn't veteran savvy, smart enough to understand what he was looking at.
Yeah, correct.
But in terms of mic points, leverage, box count, this stuff all comes into play. And if you don't have that right and you don't have the technique right, you are going to be in a world of hurt.
Why are the 49ers running game consistently one of the best in the NFL? They, despite being only able to name most people one offensive lineman on the 49ers, right? This isn't a household name offensive line. It isn't the top 5 or even close to that in the NFL. But they run the football because they have calls that get their offensive linemen to favorable leverage or favorable situations to block 99 times out of 100. They are not going to be asking Aaron Banks to consistently reach a 3 technique on the front side of a play. It's just like a difficult block to make.
Well, they're like, Puny does a great job cutting off the second level linebacker on the backside. Well, we're going to run 37 15 times. We're going to give him the opportunity to see the pitch that he likes because he can hit it out of the park. Trent Williams is great at stretching front side, displacing defensive ends. Well, that's going to be a key staple in our offense. And now we can build in actions where I'm faking to go stretch you. Boom, I helicopter you. Now I'm out on the second level. That's why Shanahan's brilliant. You watch these groups like Andy Reid or Andy Heck's Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, and granted, there are issues in every offensive line room. More often than not, they're on the same page. The Buffalo Bills, the same thing. These guys roll off the football. Their technique is the same, and it just builds on you. It wears on you. It wears on you. You know this is a defensive lineman. If you feel it in the first quarter that these guys are all together, you're like, man, this is a 2-chin strap game today, son.
We're in for a fight today.
Yes, and that matters in the National 100%. Football League.
Next question comes from Matthias. He asks, where does George Pickens rank among NFL wide receivers if you completely took away his BS antics?
Number one?
BS. They're actually awesome, his antics. Seems like every week people are talking about everything but his play, which sucks because he is having a very good season and it should be better. He has 3 TDs taken away by Broderick Jones. Penalties. I'll just say I wrote out the receivers I would for sure take over him. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, A.J. Brown. Those are the only guys that I'm definitely taking over him. 6 guys. So I don't. They're different types of wide receivers.
They are different type.
Once you say a guy's a slot, St. Brown.
St. Brown's a Swiss Army knife. Yeah. George Pickens is like,
he's an alien.
Yeah,
he's a freak of nature. I mean,
so that's kind of where I see him. Now, again, you can argue where then after that. Now, probably what I want Amon-Ra St. Brown on my team if you took the off-field antics. Yeah, it's like I would rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown than George Pickens. But as a fan, I love watching George Pickens play football. He is incredibly talented.
As a fan and as a former player and as somebody who has been the guy that can get into trouble with my behaviors, I think that George Pickens is in the perfect spot with my.
He's 100% in the perfect spot.
I mean, I fear what my imagination would bring me to if I pictured George Pickens on another roster. And not having
George Pickens trying to play for
Giants.
Who is
the Bears?
Who is just the coach of the Raiders that got fired?
Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels.
Oh my God!
I mean, when Mike Tomlin grabs him and he's like, "Hey, I need you. I need you right here." And Pickens he's like, "Look at me." And Pickens looks at him. He's like, "I got you." Like, you need a grown-ass man to lead these guys.
A leader of men.
I'm happy because I love George Pickens like you do, but I've also said he's the most talented guy on the field and he's the most polarizing guy on the field. So you need a guy to be able to balance that. Tomlin does a great job.
Yeah, their handshake on the sideline is fire. Like Mike Tomlin, again, being a leader of men. We talked about this earlier in regards to things leaving in the locker room, and it doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. It takes a special guy to hone in on the talent that George Pickens has, knowing the grit, the fieriness that George Pickens has, and to be able to corral that when they need it the most, right? And he gets the best out of George Pickens, right? And Pickens trusts him because they've built up that relationship. So from a talent standpoint, I'm with Mike. There's probably only 5 receivers, pure talent-wise, that are probably better than him or in that same realm as him. And again, he's been amazing. I think there's something to be said also that when Mike Tomlin decided to make that move to Russell Wilson, it seemed like George Pickens was all on board for it. Right? Because he had kind of seen what was happening in the practice with Russell Wilson. And if he knows with his skill set, if you just put it anywhere in my vicinity,
give me a chance.
I have a chance to come down with the football. And that's what had hurt him the first couple of weeks. Justin was underthrowing some passes. I think he didn't want to throw interceptions. Well, we know Russell Wilson with that moon ball is going to let it go. And George Pickens is like, I love that because I can adjust to any ball in the air. And we've seen him really take a step this year.
What I think we failed to to realize is we see every week a TikTok-worthy George Pickens interaction with somebody on the football field. Something that happened. If you don't think that happens once a week in practice, you're dead wrong.
Oh, for sure.
And for the Pittsburgh Steelers to keep that in-house and to get that guy to come out and compete week in, week out says the world about Mike Tomlin and his staff.
For sure.
Last one here. Ed Helinski asking, in your opinion, which type of holiday pie is underrated?
I'll go last.
Let's say I want to hear the big guys' takes first before I get some.
Pecan.
Yo!
Fire.
The best line.
Get some flaky salt and some caramel in there.
Oh,
yes, Lord!
Pecan pie.
Yeah, I mean, that's easily my favorite.
The
boys. I don't want
a pumpkin pie. I want a pumpkin pie.
No pumpkin.
Nah, pumpkin pie. You're supposed to carve pumpkins. You ain't supposed to eat them. What the hell are we doing, man?
I can't wait. My mom is going to make
Pumpkin spice latte.
Can't wait.
Get out of here.